Hello, YouTube.
Um, I'm Cameron. Here today we got our usual lineup of Alistair and Kirk. And with us we have guest Mike Brank. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm Mike Brank. And these fine gentlemen decided to ask me to be on their stream tonight and talk politics. I ran for a state house seat, District 63 in South Carolina. I've been a resident of Florence for years now, and I'm involved in different organizations. I'm the second vice chair of the county party and county Democratic Party, excuse me, and also I'm the treasurer of the Young Dems of Florence.
Awesome. All right, and fun fact: me and Alistair were trying to figure that out. What district you were in, and
Yeah.
according to my
Ours.
voter
Ours,
registration,
actually.
you're actually in ours. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Do y'all know what so District 63. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's us. I live right by Timrod Park, actually. So yeah, it's right in that,
Nice.
right on the edge of it, actually. But yeah, yeah. Um, and I guess if we're gonna be talking about like our own like labels or so, I guess we should start with Cameron and then go.
Is that what y'all want to do? We could save that till last. We can do it first. Whatever you guys
I
want to
could
do.
go now. So the political chart test, which I guess is astrology for men.
You're talking about the 4-quadrant one, right?
Yeah.
They put me in the bottom left corner for some reason, but I believe I'm a little bit closer to the I guess if it was here, I'd be closer to this line because I don't think I'm that far down. Or maybe socially at least, but not society-wise. So I guess the best way to describe myself in terms people actually understand is a democratic socialist.
Oh no, the S word.
Yeah, the big S word.
All right.
Are we going clockwise?
I'll go next. I'll go next.
Okay.
After me, you can go. Yeah. So I am Lloyd Alistair. I go by either Alistair or Lloyd. And in terms of like political ideas, I'm not as left as Cameron is. I'd probably call myself right in the middle between a social democrat and a neoliberal. Yeah, so that's about where I am. I don't really like want to nationalize, all the industry or anything, but yeah, that's where I stand on things. All right,
Yeah,
Kirk.
he's in the
Yeah.
Overton window, unlike I am.
Yeah, I'm in the Overton window.
Gotcha.
My name's Kirk. And politically, I guess I wouldn't consider myself like a socialist necessarily. I kind of just go based on policy rather than like identity politics, but I mean, I'm definitely a progressive for sure, at least. So that's about where I stand. And
Very
what about you?
Very cool. Oh, excuse me. I had a burp.
Okay, there we go.
Oh
Occasionally we
my
lose
God.
them.
What just happened? I think
Welcome back.
Discord. Oh no. I am so
Hello?
sorry. Was that my end? I think it was.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, that was your
Yeah.
We're still going, I think. Does it still show that we're on stream?
I can't load Twitch right now,
Let's check.
some reason.
I'll pull it up.
but that may just be my Wi-Fi because my Wi-Fi absolutely sucks.
It's not showing your camera right now. It could have just been Discord. I don't, because typically whenever like internet happens to me, I'm down for a while.
Yep, it is up. It is up.
Okay, it's still
It's
up.
up.
All right, so then it wasn't my internet apparently. That makes me feel a little better. It wasn't my fault. All right, anyways, go ahead.
No problem. So I consider myself mostly as a progressive. There's a ton of different labels we could kind of work through and determine the finer details. I was telling someone today, in theory world, where I would like to envision myself, currently, and then it shifts, I would probably consider myself more of a, this might be, I'm being honest with you guys, more of a libertarian socialist.
Right.
So
Okay.
that bottom left-hand corner that you were talking about, Cameron, that's ideally where I land. Now, practically, like I told you, I'm part of the Democratic Party in Florence, and I have came from that background. My family were Democrats like growing up, so that's kind of where I've always been. And I guess, but overall, to me, there's like two separations. You can be progressive or reactionary, and I consider myself a progressive through and through, whatever that may look like and could evolve into, as long as things are justice oriented, whether that's economic justice, racial justice, social justice of any type. I consider myself a progressive.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's something we've talked about before. You said practically, you would
Yeah.
consider yourself a progressive, which is interesting because, like I said, we talked about this. How there's like a politically viable profile that I think a lot of people have, and then there's like an ideal like
Yeah.
I would consider myself like if we were to have like the perfect world, then people would have a different political view. So that's interesting because a lot of people don't even address that. But
Yeah.
all right.
The problem is that like you obviously can't like set all the things you want to happen in practice. You gotta
Right.
like
You have to
appeal
compromise.
to voters. You gotta
That's-
compromise and stuff. So
That's why I said I would consider myself not an identity politician sort of person, but like more based on policy. Because yeah, I'm with you. I'd definitely probably be considered like a socialist libertarian, or libertarian socialist. I mean, but yeah, no, it's interesting because you have to kind of shift and make compromises.
yeah,
So
yeah, and I mean that's just the way it is,
Sure. Believe me, I understand. That's actually, I don't know if you want me to get into it soon, but that was part of the thing with my campaign is, we live in a purple district. It's a lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans, and you kind of have to find what I referred to as a strong middle. So in other words, there's like a weak middle that just kind of avoids conflict and doesn't do anything. And then there's like a strong middle ground between people where you find the right policy to match the need in that area. And you're like, okay, well, this works in this situation, even though it came from traditionally more conservative ideas, or this worked in a more left situation, So you just find the best policy that works, and you try to, govern by consensus.
right.
Sure, yeah.
Well, there you go.
All right, Cameron, you ready to
Ready to start what we had for the agenda?
yeah.
Okay. So we generally begin with the state politics area because I think the third and last subject connected better with local politics. So I put state first. So our first question for you is, what is it like to run for office?
Well, y'all have given me the opportunity to talk about myself at length, so I'm really excited. Are any of you guys familiar with imposter syndrome?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So definitely in the very beginning, it felt like it was not a realm that I could be a part of. As a matter of fact, what ended up happening one day was a friend of mine who ended up being my campaign manager came to me and was like, hey, so here's the political situation with this candidate, this incumbent that's been in office. No one's challenged him. And honestly, you should do it. And I was like, okay, are you pulling my leg right now? Or do you really think that this is something I can do? Because up to that point, I worked an office job and I worked at a coffee shop. And politics was just a hobby. I had opinions on things, but I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm out here to like be the policymaker or like go shake hands and kiss babies. And it's really a lot less shaking hands and kissing babies. It's more about just listening to people. But he said, yeah, this is something you should do. So we kind of set off on that adventure. And that's what I would describe it as. It's an adventure. And as I got to meet more and more people, I realized that what was needed more importantly than quote unquote some vague notion of expertise was a willingness to listen, a willingness to work with people, a willingness to come up with solutions, and really just, I hate to sound trite, but to be a servant. The reality is a lot of people go into that with like the wrong motivations, and we end up getting the wrong kind of people in office. I would love to see someone who thinks maybe they're not qualified enough to do it. Typically, those are more humble people to be like, you know what? Or heck, maybe they are qualified to do it, but they're like stepping up. I would love to see more people realize that I can do this. I can be a representative. I can be a voice. I can go and I can build coalitions. I can build consensus. I can work with the people in my community.
Because you got, I mean, a lot of votes. Like you only won you only lost by, by a small margin. And like, it's interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would have been like one of the youngest people in the House of Representatives had you won that vote.
Well, the state house, I actually, if I can be honest with you, I haven't looked at the age ranges on that. I know there's other people that are about my age running. As a matter of fact, I want to talk about the candidate that's running for my district. Y'all have someone you can vote for that isn't the Republican incumbent, and we can get to that a little bit later. But
I think my district, I didn't specify it earlier. I think mine is Terry Alexander, which I'm fine with him.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I don't see any real reason to vote him out.
Nah. Oh man, did I answer your question? I kind of rambled there for a second.
Rambling's what we want. It kind of makes it longer.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I mean, if you have anything else, I mean, it's just, what is it like to run for office? I mean, and that you kind of outlined it pretty well, I think.
I'd probably say it's pretty interesting because if I were to think of like a politician, right, I'd think of somebody who has sort of like been in politics like forever and ever. And for you, it was more like a crime of passion, like your friend was just like, hey, go for it. And you're like, all right, I guess. And then you did it, That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I would say the only qualification you need is give a shit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
There you go.
That makes sense.
Well, your friend also kind of knows what he's doing. I've seen him what he works on later.
Well, so part of any political bid is having the right team or the right group of people to help you make it succeed. It's not just about one person's charisma. Typically, that ends badly, as we can tell. But when you have the right team and when you have people that can help keep you on track, who basically what I'm saying is who you have around you matters.
Right. The people who you have surrounding you immediately are the first person to peer check your ideas, peer review. And yeah, it's definitely important to have good community of people surrounding you. And that's very demonstrative of like how you're going to actually turn out, whether it's just politically or socially. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, our next question is, what are the main issues discussed in state politics during your campaign? So in basics, or in a more basic terms, what were the main issues that popped up during the 2018 campaign for you?
Sure. So I would say the first three that came to mind that we ran on were education, obviously, because South Carolina is, I'm running out of metaphors to describe how bad it is. And that I have no more, I'm out. But I would also say expansion of Medicare, because we have an elderly population that, again, we don't have great benefits for people after they leave their jobs. Healthcare is skyrocketing. People don't have money to get taken care of. Medicare, especially for elderly people, is a huge thing in South Carolina. I'd say even beyond healthy older people, it's Medicare expansion. Okay, that was the second thing I ran on. Third thing was infrastructure, which is like but like really all of our a lot of the stuff in our state is not great. Our roads are not great. Infrastructure matters when it comes to trade, the ports. Infrastructure matters. Like tourism. A lot of people come in from out of state, and they can tell when they cross from North Carolina to South Carolina.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
I
You can
saw-
definitely notice that, and like just going across the border, it's a very noticeable difference, especially for like companies that are gonna be building themselves in South Carolina. Yeah.
Yep.
South Carolina roads are the worst in the whole country, I'm pretty sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sure.
they're pretty bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw a TikTok making fun of it. It was a guy, he's just driving the North Carolina roads, and then he said the second you enter South Carolina, it was like,
Yep. It's true. Well,
That's
and you don't realize. Oh, go ahead.
That I was gonna say, that's the first impression that like if you're going to build a business in South Carolina and you're coming to like this is going to be you investing into the South Carolinian economy, and the first thing that you're hit with is terrible roads, terrible infrastructure, and that's a bigger deal than people realize.
it takes forever to build things in this state.
Well,
I think you I'm not sure how often you go to Columbia, but do you remember like the few years the Bishopville Bridge was just like one lane, and it'd take forever to get there because nobody would like merge early enough, and they'd all be trying to get in at the front of the thing, so it would actually stop the whole line.
Yep, it's a hot mess for I don't know, better part of a couple years, right?
It's like 2 to 3 years. I think most of my high school years is just closed. Just one lane open the entire time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't remember what they were doing at all. It's open now.
Well, that made me think of two things. One, there's also a very real cost for individuals when you have really crappy infrastructure, and it's not something people take into consideration. But what happened? Any of y'all blown out a tire or had to replace your tires on your cars?
Once.
Okay, that can get expensive, and since we all know that. Right. Well, most people are about 1 or 2 emergency money payments away from not having anything.
Right.
So like there's a very real cost, especially for poorer people when it comes to infrastructure issues. And also if you own, like you're a trucking company and it's all wear and tear on your vehicles, that those things add up. It's a real cost.
Yeah. The way I see our public like our funding for roads, especially in the way we've increased it in a few years, it's kind of like the way I describe a lot of programs as it's half-assed. From what I've seen or from what I understand of it, it's like it's like 2 cents extra, but if you give your receipts at the end of or sometime in April whenever you do your taxes, you can get all that extra money back. So it's kind of the people who use the gas the most also get the money back instead of it going to taxes to pay for those roads, which it's kind of pointless.
Right.
Yeah. On kind of in line with that, we brought up what were they doing for 2 or 3 years? I am not an engineer, so I have no idea how long it takes to make a road. But I do know that we also suffer from I think a lack of oversight when it comes to public works projects. You can talk about that whole debacle with the nuclear reactor. Do y'all remember that?
Oh yeah.
Case in point, that company pretty much was like, they knew in 2011 they couldn't finish building this thing, and they just kept wasting taxpayer money and jacking up energy prices for their customers to pay for it. And then eventually the board that was responsible for oversight on them got word of it in 2018 or something. I'm probably butchering some of the dates.
Really recently.
Yeah.
That's a common story.
And this might be a little off topic, but going back to what you were saying about emergency costs and everything, I think a lot of people, especially in America, misunderstand the importance of a medical safety net, because a lot of people, especially people who are, economically challenged, are afraid to go to the doctor whenever they have an issue, whenever it's actually preventable, for instance, cancer. I don't want to go to the doctor because I can't afford the visit. So these people don't go to the doctor. 2 years later, this issue, whatever it is, has developed to the point that it's going to be more expensive to go to the doctor anyways. So
Yep.
the same load is going to be on Medicare, or on the individual, on our medical safety net. Either way, it's just going to be whether or not we can treat it.
Yeah, you're creating problems when you don't give people access to preventative care. You're creating a larger burden in the long run on medical costs for the entire group, and that ends up driving up costs. And again, it's because we have a really crappy model. Like, that's not how it should work, but that it kind of ends up being the case.
Right. It's very unfortunate, for sure. Do we want to go to the next question, Cameron?
Yeah, let's go to the next question. So this kind of has to do with the last one, but in the last 2 years, how have you seen, or have new issues come along, or have the issues that you spoke of changed drastically at all? Like in support levels and stuff like that, or is it possible for some of these plans to actually happen in the state now?
I think we're getting set up for something of a change. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I know we still have a couple more years for McMaster to be governor, unfortunately. I know that our state politics, it doesn't look like much has changed. I mean, I still think we have a terrible relationship with our education system. I think things have not gotten better. If anything, they've just gotten more chaotic is maybe the best word I'd describe it. And I think that's just because of the relationship that South Carolina is having to have with the federal government.
Right.
And I think that individuals, the burden on them economically, and when I say economically, I don't just mean economically. I mean, like, when it comes to medical issues, when it comes to their jobs, when it comes to the consistent flare-ups of racial injustice that are occurring, and don't receive the justice that they require. All of that stuff has just exacerbated and has kind of gotten worse in the chaos of the context of the United States right now. I hate to say that, but unfortunately, South Carolina, we've been doing the same thing over and over and over again. We're continuously trying to cut spending, but also cut tax revenue, but keep putting people in positions that shouldn't be there, who have been there for forever and aren't going to do anything different unless you pay them to leave. And there's no money in that, actually.
So do you think that because we've been I guess the best way I could put it is our state government has been making our state worse for so long, that do you believe that there will be a reaction finally to completely shift our state away from that?
The political whitehead will burst.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a gross but very vivid and accurate description.
Disgusting.
I want to say yeah, because there are some interesting things coming up. We have a interesting political year coming up in November, because it's going to be a reaction to Donald Trump. Across, up and down the ticket, turnout, I think, is going to respond. And it's anybody's guess, but I would like to assume that I think it's going to increase the response. It's going to increase turnout, especially among Democrats and independents that have decided we don't want this anymore. And now even Republicans that are like, we don't want what Trump's doing anymore. And it might lead to some more of that compromise that y'all were talking about, and hopefully checking out some of the Democratic candidates that are running. Think people, like Jamie Harrison has a real good chance. I mean, real good chance at beating Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham is the example of, we can get rid of this guy and get somebody better.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like number 2 on like the Senate get rid of list. Right, he's
Yes.
like right under Mitch McConnell.
And
Yes.
going back on what you were saying about voter turnout, I think maybe the only good thing that's come up after Trump got office is that people are more inflamed and maybe responsive to like politics. People are more involved
Especially
now
young
than they
people.
were. Right.
Especially young.
In 2015, I think people were way less involved in politics just on average in the U.S.
Sure.
than they are now. What he's done is kind of spurred something, which is interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Someone's going to say something.
I was just gonna note how I don't believe that the rest of South Carolina is like this, but I do believe Florence does have a very particular political landscape. Having been a part of the Students First campaign, and seeing the trouble he and his co-host have caused to our certain campaign, I'm not sure how bad it was. I mean, the numbers could have been the same with or without him. I would never know. But the Kennard show is kind of a
Ooh.
particular thing that our environment has to deal with.
The Ken Ard Show. You're going to have to actually explain that to me at some point because I'm not sure I'm familiar.
I can save that until we get more into local politics.
Okay, let's do that because I'm curious too.
It's just the local radio show in the morning.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can imagine that the president of the United States probably has some sort of relationship with talk show radio hosts.
I don't know if they know each other. It's a local one.
I know that some of my coworkers listen to it though. And
Oh,
that's the only
yeah,
reason that I know.
We
of it.
can get that. We can get
horrible.
into that when we get into local politics. We're almost done with state level anyway. Anything left to say?
No, I mean, I think I just want to reiterate that there's definitely, I think, a chance to change things. I think even recently with everything that precipitated with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, like there is just a desire for something, for justice and for voices that have not been heard to be heard. And I think younger people, especially, listen to me. I sound like the people I used to listen to and be like, oh yeah, whatever. Like younger people especially are getting that, and it's more of a natural thing for them. You know, they understand the implicit value in everybody's voice and can recognize when there's someone that has not been listened to and not been elevated as they need to. So that's really encouraging, and I think we're going to see that reflection in the way votes go.
I think I've kind of seen that too, as especially through the Lindsey Graham ad that they've been running recently, because the only one I have seen is a single attack ad for Jamie Harrison. It doesn't run on like his policies or anything. It's literally
Very
that he
personal.
it was that he studied or he worked under Nancy Pelosi and regarded those years as good. So it's not propping up Lindsey Graham. It's literally just using Republicans' general hatred of the Democratic leadership against Jamie Harrison.
Yep.
And well, haven't Trump and Lindsey Graham had like kind of a rocky situation? Like they would call each other out, and then like a week later they're playing golf. Like,
it's very weird.
I don't know what's
That's the
going
way
on.
Trump is, though. I mean, he
Yeah.
doesn't. He doesn't attach himself to like. I mean, we've seen this with like party platforms. He doesn't attach himself to a party platform. He doesn't attach himself to even his own personal precedents. He just does whatever. I mean, he reacts.
He'd hire somebody, say they were great, fire them later, say they were the worst.
Right.
You know?
I mean, that's happened with North Korea.
It's whoever will support his ego, basically. But Lindsey Graham, what I get off the read from him is he wants to act tough, but can't really pull it off. So he can only do it for so long.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean it's again, even that out against Harrison, they don't have anything. They aren't like Lindsey Graham is just plain out not a better candidate.
And that was a Jamie Harrison ad I saw. It was literally pointing out the only thing they have is an attack ad. Their own campaign is just devoid of anything.
Right.
All they have is that the other person is worse.
Right. Well, or
not worse, but like the other person is liked by the people that you hate the most.
Right. Nancy Pelosi, communism. Masks. Ah!
It doesn't
Yeah.
go that crazy now. I don't think they
Well,
could get away with that.
did
Not
y'all
yet.
They
see
can get away with
those-
like a. I think it was like when he was either a Democratic vice chair or chair of the party as a whole.
Yeah.
And he was like welcoming Nancy Pelosi and saying that he had a good time
Yeah.
working under her. That's
Yeah.
it. It's just audio clips of that.
I don't know if you remember, but there was this one person that ran for a Republican nomination for governor in 2018, and like one of their videos was them like shooting a snake. They're like, "We're gonna get rid of snakes in Colombia."
I remember that.
Like, it was on
I remember
local
that.
television. Yeah, like
And
so,
it ended up being an endangered snake, so they had to take the ad down. They had to apologize for the ad, and it brought. I think it helped demise their campaign because they were very popular before that.
yeah, just crazy stuff. Well, yeah. Oh man, and that's not even like the merry-go-round of ridiculousness that is the circus that is a lot of Republican candidates, particularly when it comes to smaller levels, state house level. You know, we have people that they wave their gun at like town halls, or I think that was, I don't want to say who that was because I'm not 100% sure, but like it has happened with I think representatives from this area, or just just ridiculous stuff. And then the nerve to be like, oh well, this person is, yeah, they don't have anything. I don't know what to say. I just, oh god, it's bad, and it's all like Trump is a political calculation for every member of the GOP. Like, can my association with him help me or hurt me?
Yeah.
And recently, no one's had the guts to be like, this guy's just bad.
Well, we're kind of. I think it's going to create a new political landscape because people are trying to be like a traditional conservative, like a
Sure.
neoconservative,
Sure.
while also being pro-Trump, which isn't going to win them the election. It's not
Yeah.
far enough. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to win the election, you got to be the Trump supporter that believes full-heartedly in like QAnon. Like, you got to be like crazy Trump supporter to win these votes over. Because like these people. I have family members that are somewhat these people. I don't know if they know about QAnon because they can barely use the internet.
Please God, don't tell them.
Yeah, I won't. But they treat Trump as the end all be all, and it's insane to me because I don't value any person that high. Like, I loved Bernie Sanders and I loved his platform, but like if he disagrees with me majorly on something, I'm just like, homeboy got it wrong this time.
Yeah, that's healthy.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's a healthy relationship with leaders.
He's not the leader of the temple. He doesn't decide the policy. Like, or he does have some setting on the policy, but he's not the only guy.
Right.
There's other people that also get help.
But also,
good
like,
for him for making it Medicare for all popular. But
I think a big contributor of why he is like the end all be all for a lot of Republicans is because, like we were saying earlier, he's polarized people so much. Whenever you polarize the left so much, then the right reacts by saying, "Oh, well, this is the only person that we actually care about in politics." Like, Trump is the end all be all because all these leftists disagree with him.
Owning the lib.
Right.
Also,
Right.
he's just like so confident, and like I noticed people on like our side of things are always talking about like fact checking and so on, but like something that Trump really showed us is that like we kind of live in a post fact world. Like, the facts don't really matter anymore, to be honest.
He
It's
just
really
says things
unfortunate.
that people go with.
But yeah, like
it was the Fox News thing yesterday. I think it was
crazy.
yesterday. Chris Matthews was like, Joe Biden isn't for defunding the police. And then I think Trump had to get somebody to pull out Joe Biden's like entire like platform, and nowhere they could find defund the police, but he stayed on the point, I believe.
That's just that's the thing, more about politics and campaigns and running campaign is controlling the narrative. You want to tell your story. You don't want them telling your story.
yeah.
That's what I see with a lot of these small newspapers that support Trump like wholeheartedly. They all believe that they're the truth, and they're also all very annoying when I see their ads. What is it? The Epic Times. It's like, we are the truth. This is the only non-biased newspaper.
Oh yeah.
PatriotFreedomTruth.ru is gonna definitely be telling you what's really going on.
I trust Patriot 1959 over Dr. Fauci any day of the week.
It's just really like.
And I've been hearing that a lot of people are saying that Fauci hasn't done his job, but the only thing that the White House has done in the last few months is tried to actively silence him. Like he's been saying, he's been saying like this is going to only get worse. Like we haven't even hit a second wave, you know, and then like we've got these states are opening prematurely, and all of this has been silenced by the White House. And now that it's kind of getting out of control, especially in Florida and stuff, Trump's like, well, he's actually not doing a good job at all, you know, and he started calling him out, and like a lot of Republicans are calling him out too. But those same people weren't even listening to him whenever he was talking, and it was actually important to listen.
Yep.
So
it's so weird to see an administration attack somebody in their own administration.
Yeah.
Like didn't they hire that guy? They hired that guy. Why are you attacking him?
Can we? I don't know if we can just pull up a list of like all the people that administration has brought on and then subsequently fired for being. I don't want to say decent people, but for being not terrible people.
Yeah.
And like going, oh no, you know what? No, you're fired.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally.
Trump supporters would rather take his word and his expertise than the medical advice of the most trusted health professional of the century and the like words of a 4-star general and like all this.
I don't think that that's anything new though. I think that a lot of people have just only been specifically listening to like, I'm going to listen to the president. I mean, that's just a margin of people that just only listen to the president. However, it's only really gotten out of hand now that Trump's gotten in office because he, like you were saying earlier, doesn't fact check things. Like he just says things and people just take them and run. So it's only really gotten to be an issue now. Yeah. He's the only person to actively disagree with people who have degrees in areas that he doesn't know anything about.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that there was someone that could speak to the psychology of this, because there is definitely something that is almost like there's almost a need to be validated by someone in power, like Trump, in your refusal to engage with things that might challenge the way you look at the world. And so if all of a sudden, you know, you have people that are suggesting that you open your mind or try to live life through another person's shoes or try to understand that different people have experiences, or heck, if we want to be specific, like there's all sorts of like I was talking about earlier, like inequality related issues that if you're like being challenged to look at those and then the president just goes, that's all stupid. No, you don't. Then you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna listen to the president now. He's my guy. See?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's called the something Kruger effect.
Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah, and it is the less info a person has, the more confident they are in their own, conclusions, and that's so. God, I hate psychology.
We do have someone in stream chat. I don't want to change the subject too much, but
I was about to introduce that also.
Okay, all right.
Do you want me to read it, or you want to read it?
You go ahead.
Okay, so we do have someone in stream chat. I will read both of their messages, but they said, quote, I grew up in the Nixon years, and as a lifelong Democrat, I am much more conservative than the Democrats of today. So when I hear ideas like the Green New Deal and more liberal ideas being introduced, I am worried that more conservative Democrats like myself will be left behind in an ever-changing party. How do candidates like Sanders and more progressive ideas of today help lifelong Democrats like myself ensure that my party is not becoming something I do not want? I'm not saying I do not support progressive ideas. They are just new to me because they are things I am not used to. And many of the ideas I am worried will not work. I think the party should adopt a less liberal platform because I am concerned Democrats like myself are being left behind or ignored.
That's a great question. Do y'all just want to go around and answer in your own opinions? Or, how do you want to handle chat questions?
I'm pretty sure I talked to Kirk about this for a while, a couple weeks ago, possibly. To be honest, the way that I see, and I know that you guys might have some differing uh, opinions, is that I don't really see the like far left in air quotes candidates as like being a real substantial like threat to the more centrist candidates like your Joe Biden's or so on. And like proof of that is of course the fact that Joe Biden has won the primary and Bernie Sanders lost for a variety of reasons, but also because his main support base, young people, don't really turn out to vote as much as like older people who are probably leaning more conservative who would vote for Joe Biden. Um, so
Or
I
playing
would
it
probably,
safe.
yeah, and it's not like a scummy tactic on their part. It's that if they get so entrenched and uncompromising in certain things, it really
Right.
harms their effectiveness and their support among like pretty large groups of people. So, probably to answer your question, yes, those are some pretty valid concerns because say the Democratic Party does go like full left, they go like as far as like that there should be no private healthcare at all, like all that stuff. It really does have a possibility of not only like uh, hurting the diversity of thought among the party, but also harming their chances of election.
Right.
Because like M4A, like no private healthcare like policy, that sort of stuff, it isn't really like as popular as just a public option. You know what I
And
mean?
it is
And
dangerous to support as a politician. I mean,
yeah, it can be. Yeah, absolutely.
In certain areas, no. Um,
Um,
but in certain areas, it's a death sentence for your campaign.
yeah, in like California, it'd probably get more like heads turning in your direction than like in South Carolina. If you talk about
Yeah.
M4A in South Carolina, I don't know if you're
You
gonna
might be able
like.
to get
and
an area or two.
Yeah.
Well,
and
yeah.
okay, go ahead.
So actually, finish what you were going to say because I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts, and then I do have input, but y'all
Okay, I'm
can go.
done. I'm done. I've already said
I
my
guess
piece.
I'll go.
Okay.
But the way I see it, I'm further left in general than everyone else here, I guess. But I don't know if I'll be more modern in the future. But the way I see it is that a lot of these programs are necessary. Um, I, as somebody who has, I can't remember when I was like a small child, and those are the years when people laughed at Al Gore for believing in climate change, or as
Yeah.
it was known at the time, or just known at the time, global warming. Which I believe the Bush administration changed the climate change in order to make it sound less scary, if my facts are correct. But we, as a generation, understand that this issue is a lot more pressing than a lot of people think.
Yeah.
And I've seen other countries do it. Yes, they have smaller populations than us, but they have reached 100% clean energy for their country. I think England did it for like 60-day period once. Um,
I would know. Tim would know. I do not know.
um, I would like to be fact checked on these. Um, but I believe that's right. Like they had a few days where they were relying on oil for some stuff, and the United Kingdom as a whole is about 70 million people, so that's about only a fourth of the way there, a little over a fourth, a fifth maybe. Um, so I do believe that it is necessary for a program like the Green New Deal to be implemented, especially in a world or in a country that consumes so much. Um, Definitely China. China needs it honestly more than us, but
Oh yeah, I agree.
it can only help if we also implement it, because a lot of that pollution from China is because they're trying to sell products to us.
It's a global problem. It's not a bordered problem. It's a global
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with
And I don't see this as a hindering of the entire economy, but it would cause a shift in the economy and how it is run, because you would have to get rid of oil, which since Reagan has become a huge part of our economy, especially in places like Texas and Alaska. And we would have to shift those to more cleaner energies. I know in general, at least us three on the podcast are more in favor for nuclear energy than a
Yeah.
lot of candidates
I was going to
are.
talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
But a lot of candidates are for like sun farms or sun panel farms and large windmills, which don't do much in harm to the environment other than the occasional bird they hit.
Well, okay, so I actually was in a speech and debate like club in high school, and just to go back on like this first question this guy asked, yeah, so a lot of especially progressive Democrats want to move towards like completely clean energy grids, and that's fine and well, but the issue is right now, it costs so much to get these solar panels and wind farms started up that it takes years for them to end up actually making that much money back in energy. They're not very efficient. They're also, in a lot of cases, actually surprisingly more harmful to their ecosystem than they are actually at protecting it, because they're, for instance, like solar panels are made up of heavy metals and silica and things like that, and glass. And these things don't break down whenever these things stop working. They're not renewable to actually make the thing itself that's supposed to use renewable energy. So they do actually have lifespans, and in a lot of cases they end up putting more junk into the ecosystem than they are at protecting the ecosystem. So it is a little bit scary, I guess, that some progressives are trying to move towards clean energy, because nuclear energy, like Cameron was just saying, is extremely clean, but it's got such a stigma around it that, like,
Because of the waste.
yeah, like it's really depressing that a lot of people have this image of nuclear energy being dirty, because it doesn't really have emissions. I mean, you'll see pictures of like nuclear plants, and they'll have these big, like, it looks like a smoke column coming out of a nuclear reactor. It's water. That's what it is. And the way that they work is they have these uranium tubes underneath water, and whenever they are activated, they don't produce any off-put. They just produce heat, and whenever that happens, then they mess with the water above it, end up causing it to evaporate. Whenever it does, it pushes turbines, and that creates energy. But people don't understand that. So yeah, it is in a lot of cases, the Democratic Party is moving towards, like this guy was saying in the chat, clean energy, and it's not really necessary in some cases.
An argument I've seen against nuclear, I've only seen it a couple times, is the environmental argument, not because of the waste, but because using the water to cool down kind of hurts the environment around it. Because not as many things want to live in water that hot, I guess.
Right.
Well,
but that's not the only progressive policy that I believe this person wants to go over. But let's let Mike have his talking points.
Have a go.
So I've enjoyed listening to you guys. So those are great concerns. I think that, again, political, and this is maybe isn't the right word, but y'all got me here at 8:45 on a Saturday, so whatever. Political pragmatists, even on the left, understand that, like, we are working with a broad coalition. Democrats and the left in general are famous because they are a makeup of different tribes and like different interests and focus. And that's part of the reason that it's such a beautiful coalition, but it is a coalition versus like the GOP, who have three main points and that's all they stick to.
Right.
and they're essentially a monolith. So
what would those 3 main points be for?
I'm
people who
gonna
don't know?
say I'm gonna guess. I'm just gonna say, y'all can correct me or not. I'd say being anti-pro-choice. Let me put it that way. I'm gonna phrase it like that.
Yeah.
Anti-pro-choice. Um,
Pro-life for
right.
conservatives who don't want to be triggered.
Sure. Second, maybe the Second Amendment and small government and tax breaks.
Not small government,
Tax
but small
cuts. Tax
government.
cuts. Yeah.
Small government in the regulation sense.
Yeah.
Right. Small government in the sense that the government makes you do what I want you to do, but doesn't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, those things are easier to run on for them than it is for us. I was in a meeting with some young Democrats, and we were talking about policies and platforms. And the reality is we had to be reminded, because we were given a template of the Progressive Caucus, right? And that is what you think it is. And we examined it just to kind of get some ideas, but we had to remind ourselves and be reminded that, hey, we're a broader coalition. There are moderate Democrats. We have to understand their position and try to incorporate it as well. I think there is some things that we need to kind of challenge ourselves with when it comes to what we are and are not comfortable. And I don't mean that as like an attack. If you look at the United States historically, the left has been where we are now before. Like, there has been talk of universal health care in the past, like way in the past. We've had
Kennedy talked about it.
Maybe y'all would have to look up specifics.
But the best place I can say for a leftist movement being in where it would be today would probably be Eugene Debs.
I was just about to say, yeah. Yeah,
So
so
it's been about a century.
Ran a whole campaign from jail.
Well, and he was popular at the time, like, and because workers' rights resonated with so many people, because there were so many like disenfranchised workers that were not taken care of, and one of the biggest changes to labor laws and how we have our work week set up, and child labor, like all that came from someone who was a socialist. So that's the benefit of having people that are further to the left in the party, because it helps kind of incorporate some of these things that we need to move forward on. However, I do get not wanting to run down run through every open door that potentially like is there. I guess all I can say is that it's valid to be concerned. So participate with other Democrats in your community that help either elect people that are local or in your state, or work with local parties or organizations that help to elect the politicians you want. And again, when more people in the room having a conversation, the more comprehensive the platform can be. And if there is a decision that's made that is uncomfortable to you, at least by being in the room talking about it, you may be able to understand that where they're coming from. Because that's also politics, is like, man, I was a Bernie supporter. Bernie didn't win twice, okay? But I didn't go, you know what? Screw this, I'm done. I do feel like there's an urgency, especially with regards to climate change. I do think that Medicare for all is something we should have. But I also understand that the United States, historically, it doesn't really remember its past. And we had, coming out of the Reagan years, everybody was conservative, Democrats and like Republicans. Like, we all were fairly conservative.
It's the only way you could win at that point in the Reagan
right.
years.
In the Reagan, because the Democrats had to move to the middle to appeal to people during that time, and we saw that up until the late 2000s.
Until Obama came along.
Until Obama, we really haven't tried to push progressive ideas. So we really are reintroducing these concepts to the party that are maybe more truer to our history than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, everything kind of got screwed up on the left with Reagan, at least after like Nixon and then Jimmy Carter. kind of just everything shifting to the Democrats being more moderate, at least at their time, and the Republicans drifting at least right economically. And I mean, I don't know how far right they went socially, um, but kind of the introduction and the of trickle down economics, despite how like horrible an idea it is and easily disprovable it is, it kind of somehow stuck and it kind of screwed our economy for the next 30
It
years.
did, and it stuck even amongst Democrats. Like it's that mindset just kind of. I mean, it was Cold War years, so like anything that was left of, well, of center was
Communist.
Yeah, exactly. And as we know, understanding the left, there's a lot of differentiation between a lot of the different policies that politicians in America have espoused both in our history and now.
Okay. We can get back to the questions in the chat a little bit later, but I wanted to continue down our agenda since we kind of have been off topic for about 20 minutes.
Sure.
Or not off topic. We've been having a great discussion here. Thank you for the people in chat. But I wanted to go more into local issues. This is kind of a question for everyone. But what are the main issues locally? They're probably more generally with the state, but it's a little bit different.
What I've heard, okay, so local politics, I'm going to go ahead and say most important to our immediate world, and also some of the most nuanced and difficult to maybe wrap our head around. You can kind of extrapolate what's going on at state level or national level, or you can abstract, excuse me, and it's easier to comprehend. But like what's going on locally has a lot of like personal relationships involved and history and things you kind of have to understand. There's context to understand when it comes to local politics. And I say that as a preface to my answers that I'm still learning. But honestly, the education stuff in Florence, like with all the school districts, especially FSD1, super, super hot topic. And I don't know, it's like a roulette wheel of things that you can like pick from that's kind of being talked about with FSD1. And
especially after Students First campaign, for people
sure,
who know what that is.
You are intimately.
It's gotten a little harder to talk about, and the window of what you can has gotten smaller and smaller.
It's deeply complicated. There's a lot of different factors for why people did what they did and said what they said and voted for what they voted for. But I don't fully understand it completely, to be honest with you. And then, local politics currently, we have a city council and a mayoral race coming up. There are going to be 2 open city council seats. There's going to be 2 Democrats that are running and 1 Republican.
So we'll get at least 1 seat.
Yeah, hopefully we get both. I'm just being honest with you. And again, I'll probably shout out. Yeah, he's great. Yeah, and Lithonia Barnes is the other one. They're both great people. I've met both of them, and they would make amazing city council people. So, and again, I'm going to revisit candidates at the end probably, but Teresa Myers-Irvin is running for mayor. She's great, and
we would hope to have her on here one day.
Yeah, I think that'd be excellent. I think you should.
I wish we could. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but if we work our way up, hopefully we can get there by November.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Ooh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So education, so local elections that are going on currently, and I would say there is a constant conversation about the development of downtown and the focus on downtown versus like the rest of the city. I think people see a lot of the work downtown. They may not see a lot of the work in the rest of the city. I am not going to say what is true in that. I was hoping maybe you guys could give me some input. I think, but it does seem to be conversations around that. Downtown, education, and local elections. So.
Yeah. Well, this was the first year I got to vote. My first vote was I'm proud of it. It was for Bernie Sanders, and then a couple months later I got to vote in the local elections, and I do like downtown. It's a lovely area, but it's fairly small in scope. The best way I can talk about it is in comparison. While just randomly driving around with someone a couple days ago, I ended up in Lake City because why not? And we toured downtown, and it was very nice. And the diversity of shops down there, it was much wider than what we have in our own downtown. While there were a lot of clothing shops just like we have, it wasn't just boutiques. I think they had like a sports clothing shop, kind of like a more local version of Dick's Sporting Goods or Academy. There's an ice cream shop down there. A bunch of stuff that we just don't have. But they also have a big events like a couple blocks away from their art fields every year, which draws in a lot of people.
Yeah.
I imagine they get a bunch of money from that, which we don't really have a thing like that in Florence.
Well, we do have the Pecan Festival.
Yeah.
That's
There you go.
huge.
Yeah.
I would-
pecan.
That's
Pecan.
big, but I wouldn't
Pecan.
argue it's the same scale as art fields.
I don't know, man. Are you sure about that? I mean, I could be wrong, but I've seen it. It's our art field is big.
It both are fairly big. I've been to a certain section of art fields. I think art fields takes up a larger amount of area though.
It does
So
last
can
all
fit.
week too.
It does last all week, yeah. The Pecan Festival, which I say it differently because why not?
That's what I was saying. I was just
It's a lot more. Or I was getting to a point. I was just trying to correct you. A lot of it is vendors that are just there at the Pecan Festival. So there's like a million different vendors that'll give you a heart attack at 30. But none of them are the downtown stores. You can go into places like last time the Pecan Festival was the thing. Soleil was still there. I went there, but you don't generally go into the stores like you would at art fields.
Yeah. Art fields definitely like incentivizes you to go into each one of the shops with the paintings being
Yeah.
in there.
The Pecan Festival incentivizes you to get like fried Oreos.
Oh yeah. Hey, and also something else I think that we're forgetting is Florence After 5 is like really big, really nice.
Yeah, locally at least. I
Yeah, it's
like
great.
going to that.
Yeah,
Once a month too.
I always enjoy it every time I.
But a lot of the big problems I see for downtown, this also goes along with the boutiques, because they're open from like 10 to 5. Literally, no one can get to them on time. That's when people work. No one can go there on time. They're gonna overprice a dress, and then you're not gonna make it where nobody has time to go there.
And I'm not very familiar with like the politics of downtown and construction, but I do know that there is a lot of construction on downtown and a bunch of money being poured into it, and like that's fine. But I think we should be focusing more on letting downtown kind of build itself. If we were able to pay like dividends to companies that are going to start in downtown, like okay, well we need to open a store, but we don't really have room to open a store, so we need construction on it. A lot of stores aren't willing to put in that extra initial capital. So, I mean, I'm just saying this off the top of my head, but like, Florence could probably offer like a dividend to pay for like construction of a new store. But I think downtown should like kind of be building itself now because we've kind of got the ball rolling. I mean, but there again, I don't know a whole bunch about downtown because I'm not very close to it. This is a lot of it's just anecdotal, but.
I go there a fair amount, not as much as since quarantine started.
Oh yeah,
sure. Yeah, I just stand there all the time now.
Yeah. I just stand on the corner and view who's
Breathe on
developing
people.
that.
Oh yeah.
There's a new hotel down there that's been there for a few months. But that's really nice. But I say a lot. I don't mean to do that. But I think Mailroom has moved out to Palmetto Street. I'm not sure if they're still there, but like the sign is downtown. They're on Palmetto Street next to Bean Bar.
The salon is still there, and the barber shop has moved, but the salon is still downtown.
And Soleil, the coffee shop, has gone somewhere. I have no idea where, but somewhere. It's either I don't know if that's a controversial issue or not. I don't know where they are. They might still be a business. They might not.
I'm not sure. I haven't really followed up with a lot of the where businesses are at. I know the shutdown really took its toll on a lot of people.
But I love going downtown. There's a lot of nice restaurants down there. If you live in Florence, go check out those restaurants. They are local businesses that kind of need to stay open. I love. If there's any that I would endorse, it would be King Hefe. I don't know what the owners are about exactly, but they are very nice people, and it's a very nice restaurant. That is not an official endorsement of the podcast. That is an official endorsement by Kevin Clark.
We were sponsored. No, I'm kidding.
There are a lot of good local businesses down there. That is one good thing. There are a lot of local businesses. Yeah.
But so okay, I wanted to get back to Kennard eventually.
Is that where we're going now?
We're about here. Yeah, the stream will probably run for about 2 hours. But I'll go over the Wikipedia page for him because it's very interesting. It's very short, but it's interesting. So Kennard is currently a local radio host for about 3 hours in the morning.
Okay, because I've heard the name.
Yes, he's on Live 95, which is 95.3 in our general area on the FM. If people of the younger generation like me still use that, probably not unless their phone's charging in their car. But so over his general career, I'll go over starting in 2004 the politics. This is directly from his Wikipedia page, which is fairly short. And we'll get to the things in chat soon. But to start, it's a section on politics. It's 2 lines. Ard was elected to Florence County Council in 2004. He was elected chairman of the Florence County Republican Party in 2009. Next, Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina. Dang it, it keeps moving. South Carolina's previous Lieutenant Governor, Andre Bauer, ran for governor in 2010, leaving an open race for Lieutenant Governor. Ard finished first against 3 other candidates in the Republican primary, and ultimately emerged victorious as the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor. In the general election, Ard faced Democrat Ashley Cooper. Ard won the election with 55% to Cooper's 45%, which that's a lot closer than I thought it would be. He was sworn in as the 88th Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina. Before we get to the rest, let me explain that Kennard is the reason that Lieutenant Governors are not elected anymore.
Wow.
Okay, next
Really?
up,
Man.
That's
campaign finance conviction resignation from office. We're not trying to slander this man or anything, but
Are we?
Are you reading from the Wikipedia page?
yeah, this is from the Wikipedia page.
Okay.
I mean, if we get to our opinions, we're not trying to.
I hear you. No, I understand. You're fine. You're good.
Okay.
Sorry. Go continue.
Ard was a rising star within South Carolina Republican Party before ethics investigations caused his political career to collapse. In 2012, the State Ethics Commission charged him with 69 counts of using campaign money for personal use and 23 counts of failing to disclose campaign expenses during the 2010 election for lieutenant governor. In June 2012, Ard settled the civil ethics case charges relating to 2010 campaign by paying a $48,400 civil penalty for 106 ethics violation and reimbursing his campaign slightly over $12,000. Following the Ethics Commission investigation, a state jury indicated Ard on 7 accounts of ethics violation over his mishandling of money during that 2010 race, including converting campaign funds for tickets to the SEC championship football game in Atlanta, buying clothes and a flat screen TV, and having a confidant
big TV.
dole out $100 bills having a confidant dole out $100 bills from a paper bag. On March 10th, 2012, Ard was pleaded guilty, and resigned from office, and sentenced all on the same day. An arrangement worked out by the Attorney General's office.
Yeah. And
from what I understand, he put a lot of his own money into his campaign, so he was using it as some sense of a wallet.
Sure, I put money in, so I'm gonna pull it back out.
Already. Yeah. But it's an ethics violation to use it that way.
Yeah, using that logic makes sense to you, but it is definitely a campaign ethics violation.
It's a big old no-no.
Yeah.
But now he's described as a libertarian conservative, libertarian conservative, and he runs the Live 95.3 radio show. Let me remember my exact word it was.
And yeah, I've heard about this only from coworkers who are very Republican, and even out of the things that they've cherry picked out of the show, it sounds pretty terrible. But go on.
Yeah.
From my experience with it, my dad listens to it daily. That's one of the things that got me interested in politics before I became or drifted all the way to the left where I am now. But when my main experience with it is when I'll use this example again, is when the 2 months I was working on the Students First campaign, which was the entire duration of the campaign. But like I said earlier, I don't know the effect of how much he screwed with the election, or not screwed with the election, but caused more people to vote no would be the best way to put it.
Okay, so he used his platform to really have a effect on maybe possibly there was a chance that he used that platform to influence people's opinions. Is that what you're?
It's not illegal.
It's not illegal.
I can't know the effect he had without knowing the universe where his radio show was not a thing.
I get it. Yep.
But for the people who do not live in Florence, which may be many people that eventually check out this video, we basically had a 1 month long sign war in a sense, and it's mostly on Facebook. But our side was slightly more respectful. I personally didn't, but there was a few people, not from the campaign, but who supported the campaign, that were taking down vote no signs. But our campaign, we would have days where we would literally just drive around and put out signs. And one of the most staunch vote no organizations, or at least leaders of an organization, was the pastor from Florence Baptist Church, I believe it's called, on Irby Street.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think he committed tax violation by... I think he was barely within his bounds of not influencing people's politics by telling them to vote for something. I think he was within the legal tax code to not get their tax exempt status removed. But the person who was over me, the person running the campaign, she and someone else owns a lot of land, and she owned the land behind Zaxby's in that area, all of it in between Walmart and Florence Baptist Christian, generally where the neighborhood is not is, or where the neighborhood isn't, is basically land she owns. So me and another person who worked for the campaign, she gave us a large amount of signs, and I walked from maybe 100 feet away from Zaxby's to halfway in between the other side, just putting signs down about every 15 feet or so. And I believe this might have been a Sunday, and we continued to do that around the bridge area in that side of town, and on the other side of the bridge. I go to school the next day. The signs are still there, which I was glad for because we had gotten a lot taken down. I leave school about 1:30. On my way home, not a single sign is there. They are all gone. Just all our hard work just torn out of the ground. If anyone else would like to talk about this for a minute, give me a sec.
Dude, yeah, no, the sign war was ridiculous. It actually kind of got out of hand just from what I've heard from the Students First campaign. Is he AWOL still? Oh, he's back.
Wait. Okay. Correction. The other person in the room with me has informed me that it is Florence Baptist Temple, not Florence Baptist Church.
Important.
But the location is still correct.
All right. Yeah. But just going back to Kennard's show.
Wait, one statement.
Yeah,
To
go ahead.
talk to the person in the chat. I do personally believe that we probably would have still lost without Kennard, but he didn't probably make more people vote for no than would have without him.
So is the Kennard show that show where he talked about Black Lives Matter being like a socialist like uprising sort of thing?
I heard from a
do not
coworker
know.
them talking about that. So
Yeah.
yes, probably.
It's like far right. Like it's not like, oh, I think our government is too big.
No,
It's like craziness. Like
this is alt-right, like actual
federal
propaganda.
federal agents should like.
I wouldn't say that.
It is. I mean,
No,
go
it's
ahead,
crazy.
I'm not sure
It's
if it's
not
the
like
Kennard
all
show
right.
though, because later on the day it's Sean Hannity's on there too.
Sean
the same
Hannity's on the
station.
Kennard show.
No, he's not on the Kennard show. He takes up a lot of the time of that
Oh, okay.
that station because
Oh.
I'll tune in there.
Oh,
I'll tune in there when all the music stations have ads or songs I don't like, and I'll just be like, "What's going on this station? Let's see how crazy it got today." And most of the time it's Sean Hannity because it's later in the afternoon.
okay.
So
That's
it
still-
could be Sean, it could be Ken, but it is the Republican station of Florence.
I wouldn't want to be accidentally confused. You know, if it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense that he's actually saying that now. That's like, okay, that's concerning.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can't
he
tell the
probably
difference. Is this Mike or
But-
Sean Hannity? I don't know.
in my own opinion, he would. So we can avoid lawsuits because I can't afford a lawyer as well as he can.
I didn't say nothing. I didn't insinuate. I just said maybe.
Look, it's entirely possible, but I heard from someone who works around. He used to service cars, and all the country folk would come in to get their cars serviced, and they'd have his show playing in their car, and he told us about some of the crazy stuff that he would hear, and it's just like it's really interesting to
not the show. They were talking about the channel as a whole.
yeah. And like it's really interesting to like try and hear things from their perspective and get into their like headspace, because like to these groups of people like BLM and stuff like poses like some crazy like serious threat to like everything, and it's really like it's insane, and it's I don't know, I don't really have any words for how
Yeah, I mean, it's sensationalism. It's appealing to fear. It's creating an us versus them mentality and trying to secure loyalty.
Yeah.
Because they were I was in the conversation too, and they're black, and they were saying that the people around them act nice, but from what they've seen on the show, like and heard from the show and how the people believe it, they kind of get an underlying feeling that these people just hate him because of his race.
Yeah, it is.
They're just treating him nice.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary.
It's a shame.
Yeah. But yeah,
it's a weird show. So the main interaction we had with him on the campaign, which I didn't specify earlier. Sorry for interrupting, by the way.
Yeah,
but so this wasn't just him; it was his co-host, which I do not know I don't know the name of, but I think it's the same one that's still on there. But he accused the campaign of using children, which we were all teenagers, to further the goal of the campaign to make it more appealing to people.
But it's all volunteered.
Like it's somewhat of a sympathy vote.
So you're telling me that it's a bad idea that kids are saying we should give more money to schools? Like it's just a ploy it's a ploy from the adults to use the children for children's stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
well, if you have people who full-heartedly believe in whatever you say,
Yeah,
I mean, they're
sure.
gonna fall for it.
Right, because kids don't actually want more benefits for their schools. Right, exactly. That's
makes
dumb.
sense to me.
That's not possible.
Kids
Yeah.
working in their own self-interest or the self-interest of them in the future, or the people that will be them in the future.
Right.
How crazy!
Yeah.
A construction worker wouldn't want safer construction sites.
No. As a matter of fact, when I walk into a plastic factory, I love to inhale the fumes. Don't tell me I need to wear a respirator.
Oh man. Yeah. And it's like sort of strange, how like that stuff being talked about by like people that have that line of thinking is like more or less mainstream in South Carolina, and it might not be mainstream like elsewhere. Like it's definitely not mainstream in like I don't know, California or something. But Kirk, I know you could probably speak to this. Your coworkers have some like pretty out there like conspiracy theory like sort of ideas on things, you know what I mean?
Yes. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
like I kind of just get a sample of what like South Carolina's like what the state of South Carolina is for Republicans just whenever I walk in. Like, oh man, it is. And like I was talking with Alistair the other day, a lot of Republicans, because I mean, some of the guys that I work with are just involved in like local things or whatever. I'm not gonna name anyone that I'm not sure about, but and yeah, some of them think that like um, Biden winning the vote or whatever is like next to impossible, and you know Trump's going to win again, and the polls are wrong and they're being skewed, and one guy even thinks that like coronavirus was made to like slander Trump, like it's
Yeah.
but like you were saying, Alistair, it's just that's how Republicans think in South Carolina, and it's unfortunate. But I mean,
Yeah, it's a headache.
but we probably should get back to the interview questions because I don't really want to make this podcast too long for you.
Yeah. Give me a second.
I'm having a great time, so I'm following
Yeah,
y'all's
we
lead.
got a high average of viewers compared to last time, which was like 1.
But
But,
that was
What?
probably one of us.
Maybe. But before we move on to education, what do you suggest people do or join to participate in local or state politics?
You're
Is your mic
muted.
on?
Sorry, this is definitely what I want to speak on for just a second because I'm gonna mash those two together. The benefits of being involved and the what can you do to get involved.
Yeah.
Is that okay? So the benefits of being involved is I think people have in their mindset that you go to vote for a president and that's how you change everything. And listen, that's a real quick way to get disappointed because there's going to come a day where your nominee will not be president.
Learn that real quick.
Right, exactly. And so that can be discouraging. I've realized though that there have probably been throughout my life 100 different elections I could have participated in that I had no clue about, particularly local elections. And local elections do matter. Like I said earlier, there is a lot more nuance, there's a lot more context, there's also a lot more consequence for your immediate life in local elections or state elections. So the benefit to being involved with those is, excuse me, to burp again. The benefit to being involved in those is that the change that we want to see happen on a state and a national level, we can help to make happen in our immediate community. And that's vital. That's vital, especially for like the next generation of candidates. So we were talking about y'all running, or Cameron was talking about running, if Cameron runs for one thing, he's saying he's going to run for the biggest thing. But if Cameron runs for anything, learns from it, gets politically involved, and then later on runs for something else and wins, what you're doing is you're seeding, not CEDE, but like seed, like seeds, a whole new group of, I think, politically active voters and potential what's the word, candidates that are that give a shit, like we said earlier.
Right.
So that's the importance of being involved in local politics. It also helps you like know what's going on in your town, and it helps you meet people too that may not think like you, that are maybe more moderate than you, but ultimately still want the same things as you, as far as like a just society and like opportunity and that kind of stuff.
But local politics is a different breed of animal
It is.
because compared to it's kind of, because on a large scale you talk about social issues, and on a local scale there will be social issues like, should the business on H Street get a transgender bathroom or a gender neutral bathroom?
Right.
But most of the time it's just like, what is the zoning law of the CBR?
And I would argue that it's actually harder in a lot of cases to run for local offices because there's a lot of context that you have to like be familiar with. And I mean, whenever you run for like a big office, you can kind of just get away with speaking in general terms about things and not really knowing what you're talking about. But yeah, and like when you're running for
And
local
it's just not as
elections,
sexy.
right?
No, it's just not as like, you're actually like running to be president or Supreme Court. It's like, no, I'm running for like city council.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like it seems minor, but like if you go back in history, a lot of like big things that happen in America happen like on a state level first. Like
right.
think
Yeah.
about the right for LGBT folks. Like that wasn't like a choice done by the top and then it affected the bottom. It was done by states first.
Sure.
States allowed it first, and eventually, so many states allowed it that it was recognized by the federal government. And I think that we're,
The Supreme Court
yeah,
ruled on it.
and I think we're also seeing this in terms of like cannabis as well. Like you're
That
starting,
one's a little harder though.
well, yeah, you're starting with California, Colorado. I know that some other states on the East Coast also allow it. So I think it's only a matter of time until enough states allow it that some sort of like sweeping federal action is going to happen. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, absolutely. Local and state level politics are often the test beds for the next wave of what can be federal legislation.
absolutely,
And
yeah.
it's essential, and that's where the fight can kind of like. So again, people are like, once a year I vote, I get either I'm yay my guy or girl, or oh no I didn't win. But like you also realize that throughout the year you can have these wins where the margins are way slimmer and your vote does matter, absolutely matters.
Wakila won by,
by one vote.
on his
That's what I was
first
gonna say.
election.
Yeah.
I think it was the primary that he was in. I'm not sure if it was the.
I think it was the
Still
primary.
just as important
Yeah.
as any of the rest of them.
It is.
From what I heard, there was like a sheriff's race, so a bunch of people voted in the other primary, so
Yep.
he won the Democratic primary, and now he's been a great mayor for many, many years.
There you go. Exactly. And like again, how did that change the course of your immediate world? It was
More,
huge, right?
honestly,
Downtown's
more
nicer.
than a
A
lot
lot,
of the
yeah.
yeah. Because a lot of these local leaders have more of an impact on your individual life than even like the president does. I mean, in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Well, and you can have a personal relationship with them too.
Right.
That's everything.
Yeah. And also something else that I've like seen is on these like city and statewide governments, they're trying out some really interesting policy that, if it is successful, as you said, it could serve as a model. So like I know that in Pennsylvania, they've been doing for some years now, a land value tax, and I know that in New Jersey, this is like coming up to a vote pretty soon. Actually, I think they're gonna be uh, trying out reparations even. So like that's
Through
pretty
the,
interesting.
I think it's business loans they're trying it out,
Yeah, yeah, and like
which
if
isn't
that
the
is
general way we'd look at it.
and like if that's successful, uh, who knows? It could spur like some other areas trying it out too.
I'd like to see it
Absolutely.
here in Florence, honestly. I think
Yeah.
that'd be helpful a lot
It'd
because
be interesting, yeah.
it give like 50% of our population the chance, or a good portion of 50% of our population, the chance to open a business.
Yeah. I mean, so that's like taking this kind of example and speaking to the viewer's question or our point earlier about moving too fast, potentially alienation. Well, that's one of the great things about local and state politics is you can see if these more progressive ideas try out in different locations, and if they work, then you know that, hey, you have some fact-based proof that, oh, this is something we should look at, and that can help like speak to it. Or if something doesn't work, then it's like, okay, cool. So I mean that is one of the safeguards too, is that we can try these things locally, see how they affect our communities, because you do have certain cities that are talking about even like defunding police,
Yeah.
and that's, so we talk about, oh, these ideas are impossible, these things will never happen. They can happen, and I'm not even referring specifically as that. I just hear a lot of rhetoric about like this could never happen in the United States. Well, the United States hasn't always historically had like as much time to think big as somewhere like France, where they went through like a series of revolutions, and then like being out in the street and setting cars on fire is like their way of saying we'd very much like to have an extra hour off of work every week. Like it's
Gas
and
prices get too high and they put the yellow jackets on.
right, crazier things have happened. So like things are possible. We do need to see if those things work, but local politics, state politics are test beds for a lot of these ideas.
Yeah, and one of the beautiful things about local politics is that as a local politician, you can, I mean, the ones that are successful are the ones that are flexible. So if they're willing to make compromises, then they're going to be more successful and probably end up getting a second term.
Sure.
And yeah, I think it's especially in local politics, which is kind of the microcosm that represents like your individual life. It's very discouraged to move too fast. I mean, it can happen where you move fast, but it's only if the general consensus is this thing needs to be the new norm.
Yeah, popular movements don't work if they're not popular.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Well, speaking of local politics, we got the pressing issue of the now.
COVID.
The last
That's what
thing
we
we'll
were
be
talking about earlier. Yeah.
It's somewhat COVID, but education. The two main questions: is South Carolina mishandling going back to school?
Yeah.
In a few months.
Yes.
Well, that's a yes or no question. And then,
No,
how
it's
should the
not
school
debatable.
board, state, and federal government or I think I meant to like say what policies should the school board, state, and federal government put in place to keep children safe in the next school year?
I am not an education professional, so I can only say a couple things with a moderate amount of qualification. Well, then again, we were talking about qualifications earlier. No, we aren't handling this correctly, and honestly, I think there may be a few different ways to handle this situation correctly, but there's a whole lot of ways to do it wrong. And I think rushing back to school and creating an ultimatum that is ultimately not fulfillable by the state or helped out by the federal. Like what has happened is our state has kicked the responsibility of figuring out a solution to independent school districts. And then those school districts have turned around and basically looked at the teachers and said, okay, y'all are going to have, like, you're going to have to make this happen. And it's going to be a conversation between the districts and the teachers, but like, we all know at the end of the day, I have 4 or 5 friends that are all teachers, and they're going to be expected to completely rewrite their schedules, completely redo their syllables, potentially offer in-person and virtual learning, do simultaneous learning, somehow make sure that anybody that misses any of that is caught up, potentially work A day, B day stuff, like A day, B day schedule, like completely redoing the school schedules, and it's going to be on them. And if they get sick, like what people don't realize is if those professionals get sick, that's it. Like they're going to have to cancel schools again. So I would just say like there needs to be some bold action that it's basically like, and again, this is big talk from a guy sitting in his house, you know, whatever, like about we need what gosh, we've just screwed ourselves over because we don't have the infrastructure for people in rural areas to always have access to virtual learning. You know, we don't have enough money for the school systems to provide those kind of resources to kids to operate in this kind of crisis. So there really is no other recourse. We either do this like the hybrid thing that's people are going to get sick and potentially die from, or we hold out and we continue to try to make virtual learning work. And you know, if you ask me what we should do, I know I don't have kids, but like if the risk is my child's health and my family's health, I would be more concerned about that and try to figure out a way to make these virtual classrooms work, especially again, because teachers are a limited resource in South Carolina. They're underpaid. You know, it's
The area
hard
is
to
very
retain them.
small.
Yeah.
I
So
think it would be safer. My example that I use
yeah,
is West Florence. West Florence is now like there's too many people inside of it. It's not meant to hold that many people. But I was saying that if West Florence could hold like 4,000 or 5,000 people and had the teachers to fill up every classroom, it'd probably be a good bit safer for them to go back than in their current state. But no building in the state does that. They're
no.
about where they should be in capacity,
Yeah.
if not over. I think Wilson may be the only high school that's not over capacity in our school district, or not high school level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got a bunch of schools that are already a little bit overcrowded, and we've got a pandemic spread by crowds. So we've kind of got a problem that we've made worse by not solving other problems.
Yeah. Typically how it works.
Yeah. I see, because a problem that I see is that like a lot of these schools kind of have their hands tied too, because of course we're hearing about how like Donald Trump is talking about taking uh, uh, funding away from like schools that don't open. He's talking about punishing people in charge of states if they don't open schools and like all of this stuff. So like it is a very complicated issue. It's not as simple as like, oh, just go to the school board and ask them to close and they'll
You're
vote on
right.
it.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so you know, it's it is rough. And if we're talking about like, I don't know, like possible solutions, there's obviously virtual schooling, but that has a problem because like not everybody has access to that sort of thing, and some households aren't really like good learning environments. You know what I mean?
And
That's true.
I mean, my parents were talking about this too because we have to send up my little brother to go to school, and like, with e-learning, a lot of parents kind of rely on during the school year. I'm gonna send my kid to school, and I'm gonna go work.
Yeah,
And you can't have like a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old in your house by themselves doing e-learning. I mean, you just like as a parent, that's not a step you can take. So it is definitely like a very complicated issue that I think we should probably be talking more about than just
Sure.
having
Yeah.
school try to reopen as soon as possible. Maybe we'll have a vote on it, like by district, maybe not. And it needs to be there needs to be more transparency, I think, because this is definitely very much an issue of the parents as much as it is the teachers.
It is. Well, and you pointed out something. You've proven the point perfectly. Public education in South Carolina isn't an option. It is an absolute necessity.
Yeah.
And we don't treat it like that. We don't fund it like that. We don't give resources to teachers. We don't give resources to districts. And then we have the federal government doing things like they are doing now, holding funding at ransom, and and then expecting the districts and the teachers to pull off the miracles. And again, I'm not criticizing the individual schools. They do have like a devil's bargain, or their backs up against the wall and trying to figure out how they're going to make this work. So at no point am I criticizing these districts for the decisions they have to make, but I'm definitely like, how can you create a problem then walk away and expect the people that you've made it harder for to do it right? I don't know. It's insanity to me. There was one point I wanted to make, and I forget what it was. Basically that, you know what? It's gone. If it comes back to me, I'm gonna quit talking. I forgot what it was. Oh, no. That's what it was. There was an argument I saw on Facebook where someone was like, well, if this school really needs to decide that they can't take the federal funds, and they'll just have to eat it and function for a while without it and keep it virtual, then they decide that on the district level. And I wanted to, that kind of blew my mind, because when I thought about it, I was like, well, some districts have more money because of where they're located. And
Right.
like, that's an impossibility yet again for schools in poorer regions. And so it becomes an economic justice issue, and it's a nightmare for a lot of people.
Well, if we're talking federal funding is such a small part of the school budget that they might be able to do without it. I think in other states it may differ, but I'm fairly sure in Florence 1 schools it's about 2% of the budget, with state and local making up most of it.
Well,
is this not like an emergency fund though? It's like extra, or is it just their standard funds?
It's just about 2% every year of their entire budget.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
that definitely does make a difference.
But yeah, as I was going to say,
But
2%
it's possible to do without.
2% of the budget though is like, I mean, to the voter, it's like, well, that's not a very big deal. But a lot of these schools already have
a lot of money.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. A lot of these
that's
schools
millions of dollars.
A lot of these schools have plans for how they're going to spend money. Like, for instance, what we're doing where I work is we're cleaning laptops for schools in Georgetown. And just that being an example of like how these schools kind of need this marginal amount of money that kind of seems unimportant, maybe mathematically. This is kind of like they're spending money, like a lot of money, trying to get these laptops clean and trying to get like school ready. And if we cut funding to it, it may seem unimportant right now, but it's going to end up slapping schools in the face. Like that's still a lot of money.
Yeah. And if they don't get that money, who's going to go first? But like the janitors, that's who's going to be told to leave. And now we probably honestly need double what we'd have at any given school, just to make sure everything is sterilized.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you figure out that like your car has an issue and you take it to like get checked, and you come back and they're like, well, yeah, your car does have this issue, but it's being exacerbated by like all these other issues and like the engine and the drive shaft. Oh my gosh, like this is a lot wider than we like originally imagined it. Yeah, it's
good old American capitalism, the cause of all
it's a mess.
problems.
It's a mess. It's a mess. All right.
As I would like to say, money is the root of all problems. I guess a problem that would go with this is I'm very in support of public Wi-Fi, I guess would be the best way to put it.
That's
like
already
cities,
That's been
cities
tried and true right now.
I think St. Louis tried it.
Well,
I'm not sure about that, but there's a few cities that have tried it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but they do it in public schools. Like right now, they have like buses that have Wi-Fi routers on them, going around trying to help people with e-learning.
No, I mean the public internet, as in a city decides that the companies do not operate in their area anymore,
Oh, okay.
and the city itself is the internet provider, just like they provide water and electricity.
And I guess it would just.
So they treat it as a utility.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
which
Yeah, de
it
facto,
is,
I mean, it is now.
and
It is
in a
ever.
lot of cases,
Yeah.
it is faster than what any company provides, despite them only. Well, from as far as I know, there's only about 2 internet companies left in America, at least on a
that are
large scale.
viable. Yeah.
Yes, Spectrum and Comcast, as far as I know.
And see, because we had been talking about this, like all three of us earlier, probably a week or so ago, about how like making internet a utility, because centrally funded things like, I mean, that being a utility as an example, are often a lot more efficient than the private sector can afford to do, because all Spectrum needs to do is outcompete, like Comcast. That's all that its purpose is. But if we were to make internet a utility, then we can set a standard for a minimum amount of broadband, a minimum,
Yeah,
like a minimum speed.
you
Yeah.
need to get voted in the next election.
The
That's who your competition is.
the
and then you can
government.
also make sure that net neutrality remains.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah, I would probably say that the case for publicly funded internet is a strong one. It's simply because the government can like just outbid a lot of these private corporations uh, just because it is government, and it doesn't have to worry about the profit incentive as much as these companies have to worry about
And
it.
that's not to say that the private sectors wouldn't be involved in it, though. I mean, it would still, because I mean, where I work, I keep on talking about this a lot, but like where I work, we what we do is like provide laptops to school districts. So I mean, even though it is like a portion of the budget to school districts to try to get computers, it's up to these individual private organizations to try to get that done with the amount of money that they have. So like it could be a public utility, and it can also be a public utility through the private sector and many different businesses that are involved in it that would generate more jobs and more revenue locally. It'd be kind of a stimulus.
Businesses wouldn't have to pay for internet except through their taxes.
Right.
They wouldn't have to worry about their fees going up anymore. But a point I wanted to get to, Kurt, do you have any more to talk before I go on?
Oh no, go ahead.
So I was speaking to this with family members, and their main opposition was to this was choice. As an American, they feel the right that they need to be able to choose what internet provider they have. And my main argument for this is you already do not have a choice. That there is no choice in what your internet provider is.
Yeah.
You either have internet or you don't have Spectrum. That's it. That's your choice here, really.
Right.
So the real choice is when that comes on the ballot, your choice is what would you rather have the mediocre Spectrum, which you have to pay a lot more for, or would you rather have a better system that you pay taxes for, but you don't have to pay for Spectrum?
Right, because when it's scaled up, it's like way more economically efficient.
Yeah, a lot. As seeing plans like Medicare for All and being hugely in support of them, the main argument I have seen for them, or a main argument I have seen for them that hasn't been used a lot, is people do not look at healthcare and internet as taxes. They view them as expenses, which, if they are necessary, they would be equivalent to taxes. So being able to
Yeah.
get a better service for less saves you money, even if it means you have to pay more in taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is probably the last thing I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna wait until we like go on another question. But
We're out of questions.
oh really? Okay.
Yeah.
That was, I think, the last one.
We're almost at the end here. Don't want to make it much longer than 2 hours.
Okay. Well, I'll just say that a reason why the right wing has been so like successful at like stonewalling things like healthcare and so on is because Americans as a whole are very individualist and they just don't like taxes. If they had a $10 tax, they'd be more pissed than paying $100 every month. And
Yeah.
that's just yeah. And
It's a cultural thing.
it is a cultural thing, yeah. It is a cultural thing. In like Sweden and stuff, people are way more comfortable with levying more taxes on themselves to like fund a certain thing. But yeah.
Certainly, yeah. And I think that in the United States we see taxes as a burden. You always hear, I mean, it's burden. But you could also flip the script on that and say it's actually investment. It's investment, like anything else. You know,
Yeah.
there are returns on your. There should be returns on your taxes. Like if you pay into this, you by God should be able to go get an education or go to the ER or
Sure.
like. And again, people say, how can you pay for this? How can you pay for that? It's all budget priority. And it all really comes down to how we allocate our budget. And all of this stuff is doable. It's wild,
Yeah.
but it's doable.
It is,
Right.
yeah.
Another thing that I come to understand is that a lot of people they don't see that as they're getting a service for their taxes because of how tax money is currently used.
Yes.
The closest way people see their tax money being used is roads and the postal service. That is it. Most of it goes towards like wars. Not most of it, but the largest
Majority.
portion of it that isn't like Medicare goes towards wars. So the average like middle class person doesn't see taxes affect them.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially in South
And-
Carolina where our roads are crap.
It kind of feeds itself because they don't, a lot of, like you said, a lot of middle class people in America don't see their taxes serving themselves. But the reason that they don't see their taxes serving themselves is because they're not willing to support new programs that would serve them.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Sure, and vote for people that are going to change it. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
We ready to move on?
Yeah, I think there's one last question that we could actually. I mean, it's not in our agenda, but it was one of the
okay.
viewers. One of the viewers asked, "Do you think the left is more progressive today than 50 years ago, per se?"
When was 50 years ago? 1970?
70.
So
I
we're talking Johnson just left office 2 years ago. 1968 riots were a few years ago.
I would probably say that the Great Society was pretty progressive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's policy wise.
Yeah.
Like
This
we're
person's
thinking,
just saying the left.
As a
implemented
whole,
policy wise.
I don't know. Yeah.
Policy wise now and what we want to implement, we are more progressive. But because we have less control than we did in the 60s, the policy
Sure.
we have implemented is probably less progressive.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, what? So from like the 40s to the late 60s, progressive policy was pretty. Well, that's not. Man.
It was a lot more economic and
Yeah.
Well,
instant-
hey, well, keep in mind, FDR wanted to make a house and a job like a right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
I'm not sure if that's a sample of the left. I mean, he's the
Right.
person that won the bid, but it's not like the consensus of everybody voting for that person, you know?
yeah.
I would feel that currently we are more widely attuned to the issues at hand, and most of those are concerned or can be dealt with through progressive policy, and that there's more pressure on it now, and there's more pressure on the party now to move in a progressive direction than there has been, I would say, since at least the late 70s, early 80s. So I do think, as far as our current wave, we're approaching some sort of peak. But I do think historically we've been further. I don't know if progressives, because I mean we've been more economically left for sure.
Yeah,
but
but it
we're
also
also
came
more
with
socially.
socially right-wing people.
Yeah.
Were the who was it? It was in the Scopes monkey trial. It
I'm
was
not
like
familiar.
a few days before he died,
I
but he
forget his
ran
name.
against McKinley in
Oh,
1896.
no. Oh, William Jennings Bryan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was economically left. I believe he believed in the silver standard, which was like an issue of the day or something like that. It meant like farmers would be able to pay more money
Yeah.
or have more money on hand or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think economically
McKinley
left, we've
won.
been there before, but now maybe we are more socially progressive. I think so. Maybe.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So here's kind of another question that we have from a viewer. He says, this is more of a local issue. How do progressives or leftists feel about unions? I'm probably the last anti-union Democrat on the planet. While I support unions taking care of workers and protecting them, I'm against their politics, and they need to stop sticking their nose in politics just to get their way. Um, I
This will probably be the last topic.
I'm
Yeah.
more in favor of private sector unions. I do see public sector unions being like sketchy, and an example would be police unions. 100%. All criticism of those are valid. Some criticisms of teacher unions kind of aren't valid though, because to be
Especially in
honest,
South Carolina.
yeah,
They're
especially
kind of necessary in South
yeah,
Carolina.
yeah,
Yeah, because
100%.
they have no voice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I can like kind of see where this person's coming from, because of course the goal of a union is to protect its employment, right? And that could be bad if, you know, very specifically, if someone in a union is like a quote unquote low quality employee, or they're like harmful to the system as a whole, and a union is like stopping them from being like punished or something. But to be honest, I think all that's few and far between, to be honest. Yeah.
The way I see it is, I've taken this point from someone else, but the current state of unions is not extremely healthy, especially in the South. So any remaining unions in the area where they are generally under attack, which would be everywhere but generally like the Northwest and the Northeast, from what I've seen, unions, their entire purpose is to preserve the union's existence. They're not really fighting for higher wages or anything better. They kind of have to fight for them not to be taken away. So that's kind of where they get corrupt in a sense, is they're seeking preservation instead of
Right.
the best for their
When
employees.
when they become an identity rather than a reaction, that's an issue.
Yeah. When unions are healthy though, which was like the 20s or the 20s 30s era, when they were getting a lot of things done, which we take for granted now, and for some reason attribute to like the capitalists for giving us our glorious workers' rights. They were healthy. They did their job. They got people higher wages. They got people less hours. They got less people dying in factories. They did what they were supposed to, and that was because they were healthy. They were popular. They weren't under constant attack by an underinformed or propagandized public, and they were allowed to exist from the government as a whole. Like after Reagan, we talked about earlier the trickle down economics, which have stayed for the last 30 years and how it's somewhat ruined our economy. I would also equate Reagan's blatant anti-unionism, which that's kind of that's a little bit harder to disprove than trickle-down economics.
Yeah.
So a bunch of people fall for the propaganda done by the right wing, economic right wing, to disprove unions' efficiency, and they can argue through, I believe, circular logic. So they create the systems where unions are unhealthy and their only purpose is to preserve the union, but they also attack unions by saying that the only thing they're doing is preserving the union.
Yep, it's kind of an insidious maneuver. I mean, if you look at the history of unions in the United States, they've made major progress for
Yeah.
workers' rights.
Sure.
Right, but again, you made a good point. Not all unions are the same. Not all
Yeah.
unions are equal. And again, I think the police union one was a good example. I was reading something about that. How what often that ends up being is it ends up protecting people from accountability rather than. But you compare that, like you said, to a teachers union, and in the United or in South Carolina, teachers don't have a lot of individual weight. So collective bargaining and being able to safeguard your employment in a state that really has no interest in doing that
Yeah.
is hyper necessary. So
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And also, we're talking about like the politics of unions. Obviously, like a coal miners union probably isn't gonna be like something I'd agree with, because you know it's a coal miners union. They want to like keep their industry safe from outside threats, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But it's just it it is how it is. You know.
Well, what that union is going to most likely bring to the national conversation is like, okay, we want to preserve coal mining. So that becomes something that, like, again, in reference to the viewer that was talking about, well, what if I'm a Democrat that doesn't believe in that? Okay, well, this is where we come to the table and we have conversations about what it looks like. Because what we're protecting with even the coal miners union back in the day is again the democratization of the workplace and giving them a chance to get out of factory towns and not be paid in factory script and not be
Right.
straight up murdered by government hired like hit groups that's dropping
Yeah.
bombs on them or companies sending them in and killing people. Like that was the history of that. So like those unions were vital in leveling the playing field.
Right.
I think it was only Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders who really considered this. Andrew Yang directly and Bernie Sanders more indirectly with his Green New Deal program. But a lot of like the people who are further away from the actual scenes of where politics affects, like what would we generally assume is like the East Coast liberals, kind of who have the power to create policy but don't really see when it's enforced. They believe in things like cleaner energy, but they don't see the effects on a personal level for certain people.
Right.
They think that truck drivers and people like that and coal miners can just transition into better or more or other jobs like coding by just offering them an education, not considering that a lot of these people might be like 50 or 60. They're near retirement, or not really retirement anymore. People don't do that anymore. But they're at the age where they literally cannot learn another skill. Someone who can barely use like an iPad, they're not learning coding and getting a job for the next 10
Right.
years. The way I see this, Andrew Yang proposed the way to fix this as people are going to lose their jobs to automation because it's cheaper. Give them a UBI so that they don't just have to beg for their money all the time. And then Bernie Sanders, the way I see it, is within his 20 million job program, because those aren't jobs that need excessive amount of training. Those are like building solar fields. I imagine there's training for that, but it can't be the most complicated thing on earth if you're going to build thousands of solar panels. Somebody who is 50 or 60 could do that. they probably learned how to build as a child. But no one else really considered that these people will be affected on a personal level if these mines are gotten away with, which is a good thing. We don't really need coal mines anymore. We don't need oil. But these people also need a way to live.
Absolutely, yeah, and we have to bridge that gap because there is a break. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole and just keep rambling, but there is a break, I think, between a lot of like working class Democrats and like the pundit class, maybe that's more about and then that's not necessarily a hateful thing towards any group. That's just the reality of it. And something I think that Bernie Sanders is really good at, and something that is going to be important for Joe Biden if he wants to do this the right way, except he's going to have to work in the opposite direction, is recognize that we have to understand these people's viewpoints and where they're coming from, and how can we devise new policies that doesn't leave people out. That's one of the beauties of being, I think, more progressive in today's world, is we look for ways to include rather than exclude.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
do we have any?
I think that's a good end to our conversation for today. It's been nice talking to you.
Well,
Yeah,
wait.
So,
You said,
yeah,
he said that he wanted to talk about
I
organizations, or
I
was
was
kind
about
of
to get
plug?
to
Okay.
that. It's been
Yes.
nice talking to you. So as our last thing before we end, any organizations you would like to plug?
Yes, absolutely. First off, thank you guys for having me on.
No problem.
Thanks for making me feel relevant. And I'm excited for you guys to all be involved politically. But yeah, so real quick, what I'll say, local organizations that near and dear to my heart, the county Democratic Party. Always, we need new and more people. We want to grow it. We want to get out the vote. We want to mobilize people to show up in November, and we also want to help communities in the different precincts around Lawrence County be more connected and be able to speak as one voice among the many that are a part of that. Same with the Young Dems. We just got a Young Democrats of Florence started up, and it's for anybody under 40. So it's anybody under 40 can be a Young Democrat, and they are a great group of people. I just got to meet some of the people on the state level from Young Democrats, South Carolina, and there are people from all backgrounds of life, whether they're moderate or progressive, all coming together as younger people to be the next leaders of the party, and maybe whatever goes beyond, and I highly recommend looking into the Florence County Democratic Party, the Young Democrats of Florence County. And I want to plug real quick some local races. Y'all brought me on here because of my experience with District 63, right?
Yes.
One of the things. Okay. So there is someone running as a Democrat for that seat, and his name is Isaac Wilson. And everything that I wanted to do with my campaign, he is wanting to do that and take it further. So you can find him on Facebook. I believe it's Wilson for 63, or you can look up Isaac Wilson. He has an ActBlue account. He needs donations. He needs connections. And he's an underdog running against a multi-term incumbent Republican who, I think the most that he's done is developed a website maybe that helps with some licensing. I don't really know what he's done, but the point is, in this year, there's a chance for Isaac to win, because what I did was kind of from the hip, but he's already connected with people. He's working his butt off, and he's positioned to win. So check him out.
Send me some links that you want, and I'll put them in the YouTube video when I upload it tomorrow.
I will absolutely do that.
For people watching this on YouTube, which I don't know how many that'll be, links are in the description down there.
Yeah.
It'll only take me like 5 hours to upload this 2-hour video.
Obviously, I stumped. Let's see. We've talked about Teresa Myers Irvin running for mayor. We've got Lithonia Peaches Barnes running for city council. We've got Shaquez McCall running for city council. We have for State House District 60, Teresa Kane. I'm sorry. So all of those people look into. Those are people that will be on your ballot in November. and they're local, and they're how the state turns a positive direction. I was about to say turns blue. It does. It turns more blue. But we move.
Purple.
We move.
We're going for
Right.
purple right now.
Right. Exactly. Anything not just hardcore.
Yeah.
Anything that would make Ken Art upset is what we're going for.
Yeah.
And then
then
Jamie
we can
Harrison.
get the other red later.
Yeah. Right. And then Jamie Harrison. Man, if we can get rid of Lindsey Graham, that's going to be amazing.
Oh,
And
that would be wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure I've forgotten some other candidates. So, look into it and get involved. And if you can't get involved with those parties, I would say this. We don't have a lot of, I guess there are other like local organizations you could kind of work with, but at the very least, if you come and you add your insight and voice to those two that I mentioned, it's going to be important and it's going to be needed. And I'd say that to anybody.
I think now Young Democrats, I know at least Young Democrats is over Zoom right now, so that's a little easier to make than a physical meeting.
Sure.
We all missed the last one. We're sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you guys for your patience. Like, like I said, we just launched. We're still kind of in the beginning stages, but if y'all came, we'd love to talk with you and pick your brain. And we have another one coming up in August. So,
Okay.
What day would that be?
Oh man.
Just for people watching.
All right, hold on.
Hundreds of viewers.
Yeah, our hundreds of definitely more than 5 viewers.
Heck yeah. Give me just a second. Oh God, where is it? Y'all, I'm texting the leadership group, so y'all kind of talk about some stuff.
All right.
This will be on YouTube tomorrow.
I'm pretty sure that Jamie Harrison is actually out funding. Right? He is, right?
In the last quarter he did, I believe.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. That's great.
I saw some. I think it was at least one person or one big funder of Lindsey Graham's moved over to Jamie Harrison.
Really?
Yeah. So
He's in
and
dire
I saw
straits.
there was a map from some big news organization. They were doing what it leans towards, and we moved from strong right to leans right.
It's
Well,
crazy.
hey, that's a win for us.
It's better than the previous years.
Yeah.
And I think we would be the first state with 2 black senators, which
That's
don't agree
great
with Tim
as
Scott,
well.
but that'd still be cool.
Well, yeah.
Guys, I can't find this. I'm a terrible officer. Let's see.
I could just put it in tomorrow.
Yeah, just send it to Cameron.
It's
Yeah.
going to be
just
sometime
send-
early in August, and we'll be posting
Just send it
about
to
on
me.
Facebook.
I'll put it down below for the
Thank you,
people who
Cameron.
watch this for 2 hours and 15 minutes.
This was a talker.
Yeah, this was a talker.
This was
Hopefully
this was one of the best podcasts that I think we've done.
Episodes,
I mean, we've only
yeah.
done 6,
Yeah,
but this
episode
is gonna
6
be
was
like,
the best one so far.
Yeah,
this is awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys are great. Keep it up. Keep building the base and inviting people on and having these conversations.
And hopefully we'll get you on again sometime.
I would love it. I would love that. I love talking.
Okay, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys Tuesday.
Alrighty.
Have a good night, guys.
You too.